Hello, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Slidin into my DMs, part of the D4 network. This is the show on the network where we basically have a D&D talk show. And we talk about D&D rules, and we talk about D&D news, and we basically try to just, have conversations to help us all ensure that everybody at our table is having as much fun as possible. So with me, as always, are some of my DMs. We've got, Tori, the dungeon mistress herself. Hi, Tori. We've got
Hi.
Preston, Viscount the Third, and we have Dallin the Blackthorn, Mr. Rogers. How's it going, guys?
Doing good.
Good.
Doing well. All right. Enjoying the summer. Getting ready for school to start again. We all have children. Yeah, we're ready for school to start again. At least I am. I don't know. Maybe your guys' kids are perfect delights when they're at home during the summer.
50-50 split.
It's back and forth. Depends on the day.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks for being here. I'm trying to think. Any announcements?
It's over the 20K hump. We're almost there.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell your friends to subscribe.
We're getting close to 20,000 subscribers. Super excited about that. Probably hit that later this month, it looks like.
Super exciting.
Why don't we just jump right in? So we're missing Corey today. He has died.
He tragically fell into a mine while searching for some treasure.
Yeah, he was searching for some treasure.
Steel.
He was spelunking. He it's a new hobby for him, I believe, and so a bit of a novice.
Forgot his guide. He didn't want to pay. He didn't want to spring the gold for a guide, and so that's what happens.
I think the rope was probably a little frayed, or he didn't set his anchors right. Anyway,
or somebody frayed the rope. We need to open an investigation.
Next episode, we're going to talk about why you shouldn't kill your dungeon master.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, rest in peace, Corey. Hopefully someone can find you with a resurrection spell and you'll be back next week.
Perfect.
As for this week, I, as usual, have like a quick ruling that I wanted to ask you guys about, and then a longer conversation, right? So let's jump into the quick ruling. This one, as usual, gets a little bit complicated and might require the use of Roll20 to explain. So let me set it up first. Let's see, a week and a half ago, I did a video, as you guys know, because I know you watch all of my videos, on the knight in shining armor. And this one was actually inspired by Tori's character. And so I know that she watched the episode at least because, how rude would that be to not? Just
so
kidding.
Rude.
So, it was a tank build, and it was primarily a paladin build, right? And they were mounted. And the whole shtick was kind of like you're this knight in shining armor, right? You're riding on a horse, you're protecting your allies, you're, doing all the things. And the question came up, it has come up in the comments, came up for me while I was doing it. And this is actually something that we've kind of addressed previously in like the mounted combat Sliding into my DMs episode that we did many months ago. Check there if you need to see it. But I thought it worth sort of bringing up again, specifically because it's so important for the way that this character worked, I think in particular. And it is this, if I'm a medium-sized creature riding a large mount like a war horse or a huge bunny rabbit.
It's called a boundalope.
A boundalope. Oh wow!
Because it has antlers.
Okay,
I love that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm writing a boundalope that, as we know, if we're playing on a grid, takes up like a 2x2 square, right? It's a large creature. Mm-hmm. Where am I? Where am I as the mounted creature, and sort of like by association, like where do my allies have to be if they want to take advantage of my aura, or where do my enemies have to be if they're supposed to be within 5 feet of me in order to get disadvantage on attacking somebody who's not me, et cetera, et cetera. All of these sort of spatial questions, right? If I have a reach weapon, how far away can the enemy be from me and or my mount in order for me to be able to hit them, right? All of that kind of stuff. So having set that up, let's switch over to Roll20. Okay. Can you see my awesome setup here?
Yes.
Looks amazing.
Okay, so this I know I'm really good at like art and like setting the stage and all that kind of stuff.
It's perfect.
Right. So okay, so this is a horse, is a very fat horse. For some reason, the free horse in Roll20, you know, it looks great, right? That looks normal, but like it's supposed to be a large creature, so it's actually supposed to. So I just made it a super fat horse.
He's a chunky
It's like a cow.
Yeah, it's my chunk. It's my chunk horse.
I like them big. I like them chunky.
Chunky.
I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here. All right, so here we go. So for the purpose of this presentation, this is my ally. It's a little like rogue elf, and this is my enemy. It's an orc guy, and this is me, right? So I jump up on the mount, and now I am mounted. I'm riding on my horse, okay?
Yes.
So my aura, for example, aura of protection, tells me that, you know, for any ally that's within 10 feet of me, they get these buffs, right? They get a plus to their saving throws based on my charisma modifier, for example. So okay, if my ally's here, right, I think we'd all agree, yeah, you're good, right? But what about if he's here? Is he within 10 feet of me now? I'm supposed to keep an enemy that I've attacked within 5 feet of me, right, in order for them to have disadvantage on attacking anybody but me. So is this guy within 5 feet of me if I'm here on the horse? Also, I've seen Jeremy Crawford. I've actually watched videos of Jeremy Crawford talking about mounted combat, and he's said you can do this one of two ways if you're playing on a grid. You can put like the rider kind of in the middle right here, or you can just pick one of these 4 squares and just say you're here for the intent and purpose of like the game, playing on the grid.
That's boring.
I don't like that. So, that gives me the weird, like I get creepy crawly feelings on my back.
Yeah,
that's weird.
I'm sitting on the horse's shoulder, right? So I guess the real question is like, where is the rider if he's mounted, and like how do you use that if you're playing on a grid in order to try and determine like, you know, how far away your enemies are and your allies are in order to like have certain benefits or debuffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Okay, so help me out here.
Okay.
What you got?
So hear me out on this. Stick with me, okay?
Okay.
Specifically for a paladin, because you're using the Find Steed spell, right? That's paladin spell. I would argue that, well, let me read you what the spell says.
Okay.
Okay.
Please do.
Your steed serves you as a mount, both in combat and out, and you have an instinctive bond with it that allows you to fight as a seamless unit.
Yes.
While mounted on your steed, you can make any spell cast, blah, 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 blah. So I think that because you are a seamless unit as a paladin with your steed, that your allies just need to be within 10 feet of your steeds or your boundelopes 2x2 area.
Okay. I like that. I especially like that. I think with the seamless unit, I think verbiage there is really nice. Makes it pretty easy, pretty clear. Okay. I mean, Preston, Dallin, you got anything different?
I'm in that same boat of where if you're like your aura, or if you're like, for instance, if you're doing an attack, a lot of times if you were, let's say you're a knight or something and you're swinging towards someone, you know, there's nothing stopping you from like pulling on the reins or like using the horse to try and lean forward and get that little extra space on it. And so if you, this is a horse you're familiar with, and this is a horse that you've trained, or that you're very, you know, like you're both aware of your own tendencies and they're used to them, like I see no problem with exactly what Tori was saying. You're a cohesive unit, and for all intents and purposes at my table, but like eventually I could probably see there's probably going to be a lot of whatever hemming and hawing about where it goes. But I think that, you know, I would just treat the horse is now where you, for all representation purposes, where you are, and if something's in range of that horse, then I think it's fine.
Okay. What do you think, Dallin?
Yep, I agree. As a DM, that makes
another
it really,
3 for 3.
makes it really easy to manage this. You don't have to sit and be like, well, wait, were you on this side? Does that reach? Just as a DM for ease of combat, which is already tedious and long, and you can easily forget things. It just makes it more streamlined. So I would say just, yes, do that. But if you're going to do that for the paladin, then any other class that decides to ride on a horse that's large or whatever, you need to extend the same effect to them.
Right. And that was going to be my next question, obviously, right? Like, okay, what if I'm not using the Find Steed spell? Like, are we no longer a seamless unit, and do I not get the same benefit?
Or... You're not a seamless unit, but we got to be fair to all players. If you're going to essentially extend your auras by 5 feet in each direction, then I think that should apply to everybody else. So.
Well, just for the sake of healthy debate, then I say then I'm gonna be the bad cop this week, and no, any attack has to originate from where you are. So if you're there, and let's say you're representing your person in the middle of those 4 squares, then the middle of the next 4 square is 5. You know, the middle of the next square, you treat yours as the 5 foot square,
right? So like
from you on the grid.
Okay, so yeah, right. Like if my character is here, then 5 feet from my character is here, right? And 10 feet is here. So this guy's not quite.
Yeah,
there,
but technically
right?
You're touching the square. You're kind of in all the squares, right? So that's your argument, is you can say, well, a part of me is in that top right square.
How wide is my character? They're definitely not 5 feet wide.
But does
right?
this? But again, and this is recognize that Preston disagrees with what he's saying, but this also brings into question then, because when you're making your attack, right, that doesn't suddenly, because you're on a horse now, you have more reach, right?
You have the high ground.
Your sword's not twice as long. So I'm just trying to make a healthy debate conversation.
Sure.
No, yeah, these are all things to consider for sure. But as a DM, just to streamline combat, I would just say effectively, yes, you can hit that.
100%.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, obviously, like, okay, so let's say, if we don't count the horse as like me for my Pally aura, right? Then really neither of these guys are going to be in my aura. They have to be standing right next to my horse, basically. And what's even more potentially complicating about this is that, like, okay, what if they have to be within 5 feet of me, like, in order to not suffer advantage. Like, they've got to basically be here. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, if you're using a grid,
which would basically nerf the Cavalier, I feel like, as far as like the stuff that they have, I think it's dumb. So
yeah, I think if you're using a grid, it's really the only option that makes sense. If you think, listener, that there is a different or better way to handle this, or you disagree,
or if you have a better argument than me, because I didn't do a very good job,
please let us know. Because I have a hard time imagining this being handled any other way than just assuming that you and the mount are one and the same when it comes to, like, needing to figure out where people are in relation to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
If your game is like a combat heavy simulation style game, then I can see saying, okay, you have to pick one of the corners and stick to it and remember that. But if you're kind of playing just narrative focused, whatever, then it doesn't matter that much.
Right.
Just pick the middle and say, effectively, your aura is the horse and beyond now. Okay. The origin form is the horse. Yeah.
Any final thoughts on the quick ruling before we move on? No. All right. That was easy. Okay, well, let's jump into the longer conversation then. Thank you to our sponsors. About the longer conversation, with Corey no longer with us, I thought it would be a perfect time to have this little chat that I've been wanting to chat all about Corey. No, just kidding.
Whoa.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to.
It just sounded like I was setting him up for some sort of. No.
And this is the episode where we air all our grievances about the man and the legend.
No, not at all.
The man, the myth, the legend.
I wanted to talk about how to DM at a table when one of your players is also a DM. And I think Corey is like the most experienced DM out of all of us. At least for our group, he's the one that is like the usual DM, right? Preston, I may be wrong. I know that you kind of DM for another group. I'm not really sure how long you've been doing it, but regardless,
4 years,
right?
3 years, something like that. Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, I think most of us kind of think of Corey as sort of like the main DM for our group anyway. And so we've all had experience like being a DM with him at the table or with other people who, take that role at the table. And so, it seems to me that there are some things that you might need to consider, or at least some potential challenges that you may have when you are DMing for another DM. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit and sort of get your guys' thoughts on, what do you see as the potential challenges in that scenario? And also, of course, what do you do or what tips might you have to help people like get past those challenges? So, to me, in my head, at least, just I'm thinking, gosh, how do I keep them from like metagaming, or being a rules lawyer, right? Or,
After all, rules lawyer is just a DM without the hat.
And that's right. Or a wannabe. How about that? Because sometimes I can be a rules lawyer and I'm not a DM. So
I guess DMs are more of a rules judge rather than a rules lawyer.
There you go. But yeah, so like for me, for sure, I think part of it would be if I ever were to, take a hand at being a DM at our table, I would be like super self-conscious, right? Like, oh, am I doing this right? Like, am I, and also like trying to find my own voice and doing it my own way and not just sort of parroting, somebody else's style. So all of these things, kind of come to my mind when I think of like, how would I approach this? So what do you guys see as the potential pitfalls, first of all, and then maybe we can talk about, some tips on overcoming those potential
I would like to add the upsides of having a DM at your table.
Sure, yes,
because
please.
there are plenty, but we can talk about that after we talk about
Sure.
the bad stuff.
We'll make that our in conclusion.
Yeah,
Start with a sour, end with a sweet.
That's right. Okay, so let's talk about the challenges. Who wants to start?
I think Tori should start. She had to DM a group that had 2 DMs, so
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
past DMs.
Right to the deep end. Go.
For sure. I think it, like you said, can be super intimidating, especially if there's a DM that has been a DM forever and you're brand new to it. Mm-hmm. That it's overwhelming. And so for me, I think like the first thing you need to do is just adjust your expectations, right? Like just know that it's going to be tough because it's probably not going to go like how these other games go with this regular DM, someone who's more experienced. It's going to be kind of rough at first. So I would say you got to adjust your expectations. And I do think that I've been lucky in the respect that I like know and trust you guys. And I don't feel like you would ever like make me feel bad for not knowing all the rules or doing something doing something like just wrong or weird. So I appreciate that. but I think it's important to remember that like everyone started at square one when they became a DM, right? Like we all you can do is grow from there.
Yeah.
And so I assume like everyone else is playing with really cool people like we get to play with. And so it shouldn't make you feel too insecure. But if you are worried about them like nitpicking your every move, then maybe you don't want to play with them.
If you're at a super judgy table, find a different table.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
know.
so tip number 1, temper expectations. I'm taking notes. Temper expectations.
Nice.
And maybe number 2.
Is this carrying over into the D&D games too?
No.
Oh, okay.
Tip number 2 would be find non-judgy people to play with.
Succinct.
Like I don't know. That's, and maybe some people enjoy playing with someone who's going to like be
Some people really
a role
like being
player
judged.
Antagonistic.
and that's great for you. But for me, that's not my speed. And so if you feel like uncomfortable in that situation and you know that these people won't let up, then get yourself a new group to play with.
Sure.
I don't know. I just think like, why would you put yourself in that kind of situation?
Sure.
I wouldn't.
Know thyself.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that, and I think that I'm sort of going off script here a little bit, but that's okay because these conversations are always a bit rambly, right? Like I'm just thinking too in my head, as a player, like it's important to also temper your expectations and not. Do you know what I mean? Like not.
Don't apply.
Don't hold them to
DM
Matt
that
Mercer's
person.
standard.
Yeah, exactly. Or even like Corey Avis's standard or Tori's standard or, you know what I mean, Dallon's standard. Like understand that like everybody's different. They're all going to have their own style. They're all going to have their own voice, especially if they're new. Like be super forgiving. And it's probably worth having a chat with them too and asking like, especially I think a new DM, like, okay, look, how much do you like if I'm a more experienced player, for example, like how much like help do you want? That's not really help, right? Like
Right.
like if this is hard. Like sometimes as a player and you know that a DM is newish or whatever, or like you spend 20 hours a week looking at and reading the rules of Dungeons and Dragons in order to make sure that your characters actually work as you present them, right? And you're pretty well versed in the rules, even though I still screw something up in every single episode, right? But like how much help are you going to want? Like if you do something or make a ruling or something and it's maybe not rules as written, like do you want me to be like, actually, you know, I think that blah, 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 or do you just want me to like keep my mouth shut and just let you run your table and like rules be damned? You know what I mean? Like that's probably an important conversation to have, I think.
And I think it depends on the table too. Like, because if at the very beginning, you know, everyone's level set that, hey, this is my first time DMing, be gentle. And that DM, it is something as a DM that you have to be both firm in your conviction of if you do set a boundary or you do say, hey, this is something I'm allowing at my table, kind of holding that ground, so to speak, against if there's just one person at the table that just fundamentally disagrees with that. But if the rest of the table's fine with it, kind of thing. But level setting that expectation and saying, hey, you know, like, here's the things that I'm firm on. Like, I want to do potions as a bonus action. I want to do XYZ. But anything barring outside that, I'm going to expect you guys to know your spells. I'm going to expect you to know what they do, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm going to apply my rules to them. But please, you know, as a DM, either they can say, my rule is law, or they can say, hey, I know I'm imperfect. Please fill in the gaps for me as I'm going along. I'm going to try my best to remember concentration and what that means. I'm going to try my best to remember this and remember what that means. Please help me to do that kind of stuff. Right. It's being vulnerable enough as a DM to say, hey, I'm not perfect. So
yeah, and if anything, I feel like that. Oh, I'm sorry, Colby.
No, I was just going to say, like, I'm just writing down tips. Set expectations. Be vulnerable. I'm hearing, and or like. Be okay to like ask for help, right?
Yes, be okay to ask for help. Yeah.
Okay. What were you going to say, Tori?
Oh, just to add to what Preston was saying, I think that if you do put some of that responsibility on your players, that will take so much pressure off of you to have like the perfect game and be the perfect DM. If you can say, look, I need your help. Can you keep track of these things? I'm responsible for telling the story. And if I can just focus on that and not be so caught up in like the rules and mechanics of everything, that'd really help this session go a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Stuff like tracking initiative order or things that's just like things that you're already like your first game is just so much. There's so much going on that
I would
one less thing in
say
your head.
specifically assign those to the person who was a DM or is a DM for another table or whatever, because they're used to running combat and doing like a million things at once. So give them some tasks to be like, okay, you are going to track when this character gets hit, he's concentrating. So make sure you remind me, or you're going to track this character's poison for 4 rounds. So will you keep track of the next 4 rounds for me or whatever? And just kind of assign those to that past DM.
That might kind of satiate their their they're wanting to help and seeing kind of the shortcomings of a newer DM. That might kind of help.
Yeah.
And as a DM, don't be too hard on yourself, because your first session is going to be really bad, probably.
Right.
Like most likely, it's not going to go that good, and that's okay. I remember my first session, and it was rough. And it made me almost want to not ever DM because I was so bad.
But the thing is, too, is like a lot of times,
disagree.
especially if you're with the new players, those new players don't know any different. And that could have been the best game that they've ever played.
That's possible.
That's true.
So don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah. Tip number 7, try to, well, now this is turning into a tips for new DMs and not tips for DMing when you've got a DM at the table. I was going to say,
I think they both apply.
Find a group who has never played before. That's a great way to like break yourself in as a new DM, right?
I think we have this bias or this assumption that if you are becoming a DM, that you already had a DM. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's not.
I think
always
that's
the
where
truth.
our bias. It's not always the truth, because you could have someone who's like, "Hey, I bought these books and I've read them, but I've never played." Like,
I want to know how many of my readers have like their first experience with Dungeons and Dragons was as a dungeon master, that they jumped in as a DM having never played the game before. Let me know and tell me your horror stories or your awesome, amazing stories
successes
too.
and failures.
Okay, let me, Tori. Well, first of all, sorry. Dallin, I think your first session as a DM was fantastic, for the record.
Well, that was my first session with you guys. My first session.
You were not a virgin when you came to us.
No,
I did not realize
that
this.
was me with multiple partners. Yeah.
Gosh, now I feel like
sorry.
Dirty.
Yeah. I should have told you beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, a little more transparency in our relationship would be appreciated.
I kept it a secret. I wanted you guys to go easy on me.
So tabletop transmitted diseases, is that a thing? TTD? Something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then who was your first time?
So I had friends coming over, and they knew that I had played D&D, and they're like, "Oh, I've always wanted to play. Like, I don't know what it's about. Like, help me. Let's play one time." So I'm like, "Okay." And normally we just play like board games. So I set up this session that I think is going to go awesome, and I create
explain the rules, and they all create characters. So 3 hours later, you're ready to go.
Right, honestly. And then the mission that I do, this little one shot that I'm supposed to do, I'm like, "Oh crap, we're not going to have time for this." So I'm like cutting corners, trying to make the story more concise. They're going off on tangents. I'm trying to like rein them in. And part of that is just one shots. They're not very, they're hard to have, character choice, but
good story. And
yeah. And so by the time it was over, I can tell a couple of them had fun, but I was like, I don't think these people ever want to play D&D again. I think I gave them a bad representation of the game. And I'm like, dang it, like this sucks. But then I like took that feeling and like tried to hone my skills on like made sure I read the DMG again, go over all the rules. And the next time it was a little bit easier, and the time after that was a little bit easier. And I think probably about my 5th or 6th time, I was like, okay, like I think I know my voice. I think I know the type of stories I like to tell. I applied some lessons that I had learned from like English professors on like telling a good story and like creative writing. And I was like, this actually applies more to D&D than a lot of other things that I'm trying to apply to it right now. And that actually helped, was having that kind of more English teacher vibe, applying it to my sessions, and it actually helped a lot. So
okay, so like I'm hearing, be patient, like stick with it. Just know that it'll get better. Again, this is really, I mean, these are tips. Maybe we need to rename the episode. Maybe this should be tips for new DMs. Tips but I mean, again, like the same can apply, right? If you're DMing with with a more experienced dungeon master, like there might be some awkwardness at first. There might be some challenges, but stick with it.
It still feels applicable too, because even as if you've been DMing for 4 years, there could be someone who's been DMing for 50 40 whatever how long, for they like forever, right? And so that your level of experience doesn't necessarily like how long they've played, like they might have different preferences, experiences, things that they've done. Like you can't just like if you're in the DM seat, just remember that while your rule is law, it's okay to say, yo, like I've never run into the long jump. Like, how do you do long jump? Does, like DM XYZ? Hey, can you help me out with this? Like, or can you look this up in the DMG for me while I look up this other thing to resolve whatever's going on, either in combat or outside of combat? Just like be willing to draw on each other's experiences.
Yeah.
Tori, can I ask you a question and ask you to be brutally honest with us?
I'll try to be brutally honest. I am usually too nice.
Don't you hate those kinds of questions? Can I ask you a question? What are you supposed to say?
Yes.
No.
Defend yourself.
So I know that that your first experience as a dungeon mistress was with the three of us running Storm King's Thunder. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, actually, you had done a one-shot before that even, but then we went on to Storm King's Thunder. Anyway, like how annoying were we as players? Like trying to interject about like how it's supposed to go or what the rules say or da, 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 da. Do you know what I mean? Like, was that super disruptive? Did it take you out of your head? Was it like, okay, great. I don't care about that. I'm trying to tell a story. Do you know what I mean? Like, can you give me some insight there?
Yes, I can. I honestly was not even concerned about you guys sharing your insight and input. I was mostly just like so worried about living up to like Preston and Dallin because they're amazing DMs.
Yeah.
And like, I was just so worried about getting from point A to point B that to me, it wasn't offensive. It didn't bother me when you interjected. And to be fair, you had said like, do you want us to tell you, if you're doing something wrong? And I said, yes. So to be fair, like,
how's that for passive aggressive? Do you want us to tell you if you're doing something wrong?
We asked for permission to mansplain before we mansplained.
No, you guys did not mansplain at all. Okay.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you.
The difference is
that's the goal.
Mansplaining is assuming that the other person doesn't know the answers and then just offering them without their permission. So you guys did not do that at all. Yeah. So truthfully, I do feel like I welcome your insight, and even still today, I mean, Alino, I'm so glad I sit next to Colby in Tales of an Area because I'm always asking him questions, and I love that he.
Sorry.
But I love having that feedback because that's not my strength either. Like I am more about like telling a story, and so again, the mechanics of it, I could really care less. Couldn't care less. That's what you say. Couldn't care less.
True. Okay. Well, let me ask this then. How about like, so mechanics aside, right? I'm thinking about like how to sort of like find your own voice and your own way of DMing and telling a story, and not just like sort of mimicking or parroting the DM that you sit with, right? That's playing at your table now. Like, what are some tips that you might have for someone who's in that space and trying to figure out, like, I want to like find my own voice. I'm gonna say this, of the three of you, and four, you know, including Corey as well. Like, I really appreciate how you guys all have kind of your own different style of running a game. You know, I mean, I think I don't know, like. Um, you know, you definitely all have I think your own voice and things that you obviously sort of like to focus on. Like Preston, for example, is like almost every combat situation with Preston is a like, maybe you will have combat, or like, I'm going to give you all of these ways to not have combat if you want, right? And to the point where almost like if I'm playing at Preston's table, I'm always like looking around like, nobody better try to do diplomacy here. We're fighting.
That's true.
I want my XP.
That's true. You can blame my wife for conditioning me to do that. So.
And like Tori is a lot more like, I'm going to say, like laissez-faire. How do I say this? Like very free form. Like, I feel like you're much more of a Tori, like you're much more of a like a go with the flow. Like, you know, hey, like whatever happens, and like, you know, rules are important, but they're very much like secondary or maybe tertiary, right? To like to like the story that I want to tell here, and that's great too, and fine and fun, and well, anyway, Dallin is very much like a like, I can tell that he spends a lot of time, like it's almost like he's written a novel, and like, and now we're the characters in that novel, and he's gonna sort of help guide us through it. Not that you railroad us, because I don't feel like that's the case, right? But you have these like major set pieces that and like story beats that like it's really important for us to hit. And I enjoy that and appreciate that. I don't know. I appreciate like all the different styles, but like what I'm wondering is, you know, how do you sort of find your own voice? Particularly, how do you like not try to just parrot, you know, somebody else's style, or should you, until you do find your own? You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's fine.
I think inherently you're going to have your own voice just because you're your own unique person, but you're also kind of a sum of all your parts, right? Like you're the greater, well, how am I trying to say? You're a little bit of everything that you've experienced, right? And so you inherently are going to parrot your DM a little bit, but I don't think it's like you're going to just copy them directly. You're just taking things you like from them. Or like, oh, I really like the way that they did this. But also, I think you're, especially if you've been a player first, you're thinking like, okay, well, these are the things I enjoy as a player. I want to make sure that I highlight these or stress these in my games. This is what's fun to me. So let me like make sure that happens. Mm-hmm. And so I think just inherently with that kind of combination, you just have your own unique voice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think like when you're in school, you remember learning about like poetry, for example. I took a poetry class in college, and like the first thing that we did is our professor assigned us all of these different poets to read their work. So we've read all this work and to get ourselves familiar with different people's styles. And then he had us write our own like assignments, right? Like you had to write a haiku, and then you had to write a limerick and a sonnet and free verse and an elegy. I think, Dallin, that would probably be your forte. And then after going through those motions, like you kind of find yourself and you're like, okay, yeah, this is what I like this is what I'm good at. I think that same thing with being a DM. I don't think there's anything wrong with mimicry, and it might make you feel like you can find yourself a little better. But I agree with Dallin, like you might take parts of what Preston is really good at and apply it to your game, but it will still be your own game.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like, I think that something we all too, I don't think our table we forget too much of this, but I think a lot of times it's portrayed that the DM is not a player, but the DM is absolutely there to have fun just as much as the players are. So make sure that what you're doing feels right to what makes the game fun for you, because if you're not having that fun element, you're going to get burnout, and you know, it doesn't matter if you're a veteran or a new player, it's going to happen. So yeah, find your voice and just be true to yourself.
Okay, awesome. Well, are there any other like potential challenges, hurdles, tips that you guys would have?
Be comfortable holding your ground, because you're, you know, if you're the one who's running the game and you put the, you know, 6 to 10 hours or whatever, however much time you spent putting that game together, don't feel like you need to take the backseat to someone else who's just a player, not just a player in the game, but you know, someone else who is not, this is not their domain, so to speak.
Yeah, don't let them steamroll you. And if you need to, pull them aside and have a conversation, right? Like we always say on this in this series, right? Communication is the most important thing, right? So if it's a problem, if there's something that's come up that's bugging you, if they're interjecting too much or telling you how to run your game, like pull them aside, have a chat with them, right? And just be like, hey, this isn't really working. Like, I appreciate that you might know the rules a little bit better than I, and you know, for sure, like if I need help understanding something, like you will be the first person that I go to. But I would also appreciate it if, you know, you just
don't second guess everything.
Yeah, not interject so much, and you know, and if you keep doing it, then I'm just going to kill your character. I'm the DM and I can do whatever I want.
Swarm on all of my spell slots for my all NPCs going forward.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, what about the positives then? What are the good things about DMing with another DM at your table?
Yeah, so for me, it was so nice on session 1 when we were doing Bronze Battalion to have DMs there, because I could throw some maybe kind of loose plot hooks and I knew that they would just jump on them, because they're like, oh, I hate when my players don't see the plot hook. So like, let's follow this thread.
Yeah.
So you can kind of have almost like a lazy introduction, because you're like, look, we're going to get to cool stuff, but like, we just need to, like, I need you guys to just jump on board. And having DMs who've played, they're more likely to just be like, let's follow this. Yeah, we met in the tavern, whatever, or, you know, whatever the scenario is, like they're more likely to just jump on it and go with it.
I like that. I hadn't thought of that. I thought, you know, it'd be nice to have someone to sort of guide you with the rules and things like that. But yeah, for sure. Like they know, you know, what is challenging about being a DM. And so they're probably going to be more empathetic and more sort of better able to like help you solve those problems or those challenges that DMs typically have, because they know, right? They know what you're experiencing. No, I like that. What else? Any other?
They're generally good at ad lib, because they're used to playing 15 different characters at a time. So now that they have one to focus on, it's usually it's easy to goad something out of them. Like Dallin said, either the plot hook or like they recognize, oh, he's using my flaw, and I want to, not necessarily to exploit what I'm doing, but to help draw out my character, and they'll usually kind of put their best foot forward there.
Right. It's like they've seen the other side of the curtain, right? And so they know what you're doing. They know your tricks a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of the tricks.
Yeah, I will say, Preston in particular, I think you're like when it comes to ad-libbing and having lots of like characters that you can just like throw out at a moment's notice, like you're as good as it gets. Preston's repertoire of accents is stunning.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm very envious of it.
Humbled.
It's so good.
One of the other things I really enjoyed that was surprising to me was that when Dallin and I, when we were doing the Bronze Battalion, and we kind of had that little brainstorming session at the beginning, and then at the end, and that kind of handoff, having someone else who's kind of in on the joke, and having someone else who's like, okay, here's the grand scheme of things. Am I absolutely crazy? This is where I want to get to, and this is where I want to go. You know, tell me, am I silly? Am I, you know, whatever? And having that sounding board, even if it wasn't for every session, but just for marked for like key points or key particular tie-ins. I found that really enjoyable.
Yeah, so they could serve as a great, I mean, even so for those who don't know, when we did this homebrew, we called it Bronze Battalion, and Dallin and Preston actually tag teamed as DM. Like one of them would run sessions for like several weeks or even months, and then they'd hand it off and the other one would play and one would DM for a while and then back. Even if you're not doing that, because I think that's fairly rare, right? You still could have like a potential confidant, you know, that you could go to and be like, hey, let me bounce this off you. I'm thinking about doing this with the story. You know, do you think that's a good idea? What am I not thinking about that might, you know, why might this not work? Or what tips might you have in order to kind of, you know, improve the story, improve the plot, improve, you know, combat, etc.
It was nice because I'd go to Preston and say, what about this? And then he'd be like, ooh, did you think about this? And I was like, oh, that's like 40 times better. That's so cool. And then like write it down, like make sure I start directing the game towards that, because like that is just so awesome.
Yeah,
and so it's nice to have that balance.
And same, and I know we're like going in this like pat each other in the back session, but as far as like Dallin did a really great job. I always loved the things that, because I would always be like, yeah, like this would be cool, and then he'd take it like 3 levels further. And then when we get in the game, even though we talked about it, I was like, I had no idea this is what was coming. Like, this is so cool. Like, I love it. But I think carrying with that whole story vein, the other thing I think is valuable is like when you're trying to talk about characters and you're trying to build a character, I feel like DMs, they're used to deep diving, especially homebrew DMs. They're used to fleshing out characters, you know, to the nth degree. And it's really easy to have their characters in a game, I feel like, because they give you like on a platter, usually, here's a bunch of stuff that you can use as plot hooks in my game if you want to, but if you don't, like it won't affect my story.
Right.
So,
yeah, they create a backstory that gives you plenty of inroads to like take and run with as you're developing a story for their character.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing for me is I just feel like there's a safety net there. You know, you don't feel like you're floundering around and you're gonna be completely up the creek without a paddle. You have someone to rely on, someone who's got your back, and if you're really struggling, they can help you out. And I think that's huge.
So final tip, don't DM for the first time with people who have never played the game before. Because then they're going to help you, as long as they're not judgy.
As long as they're not judging.
As long as they're not judgy.
There's a lot of criteria.
It's true. I recall a time I couldn't nail this like goblin voice. And so I was like, Preston, I'm going to chat you the things that he's going to say and you do the goblin voice for me. Cause like, I can't do a goblin voice. It's like, here you go. I'm going to type out and you say it for me because you can do the goblin voice and I can't do that.
Do the goblin voice. Let's hear it.
Yeah, we got to hear the goblin voice.
I have to remember what it was. Like that was off the cuff.
It was crickets. I think was his
crickets
name.
And like, hey, what you gonna do, man? Or like something like that.
That was it.
I hear you need some
Because
stuff.
he was my Yanoa guy.
Yeah,
because I was an urban bounty hunter, and Cricket was the name of the goblin guy that I knew that was helping me out or whatever. Okay, awesome.
Goblin Saplings, Warcraft 2. That was where it came from. So.
Nice.
Well, thank you for watching and listening. Appreciate you guys and love you very much. Thanks for all of your support. Please do all of the things that I'm supposed to tell you to do, like join and subscribe and comment and share and
smash that button.
Turn on notifications.
Please do that again, Dallin. That's amazing.
I don't even remember what I did.
I don't know. It was so great.
It's a new Fortnite dance.
I love it.
It was a good one. Do you know, I you don't have to put this in here, but I've had poetry on the brain now. I wrote you guys a limerick about an area. Do you want to hear it? It's a clean limerick.
Yeah,
it's not dirty.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
There once was a man from an area whose cracking did. Okay. When I say this,
So it is dirty.
Funny. It is. No, it's clean. There once was a man from an area whose cracking did cause much hysteria. Craggy's power he siphoned, all the people he frightened. Aventhi best watch his posterior.
That's right.
I love it.
Posterior doesn't really rhyme.
But it
but
works.
if you say it in a New York accent.
He's gonna get some
I don't know if it
serious
comes through, but-
butt action coming his way.
Butt
to his
action.
posterior.
It is craggy.
Now it's a dirty limerick.
Yeah.
I love it. Well done.
Okay, that was fantastic. And with that, I think we're done.
Yeah.
So
Can't top it.
thank you, my friends, my DMs, for joining us. I always love these conversations, and yeah, have a great day, everybody, and we hope to see you soon. Go check out the rest of the content on the channel if you haven't. Okay, see you later.
Bye.